All right, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of the What Now Show. I am your host, Suryansh Basu Malik, and I am joined today by one of the veterans in the sport. She is the number 2 ranked Bellator featherweight in the world. Her name is Arlene Blencowe, the Aussie anger fist. Arlene, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Thanks for having me on.
All right, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So I want to start with the last time we saw you out in public, which was not exactly in public, but because of the pandemic, it was a closed door fight, but it was for the featherweight belt in Bellator against one of the best fighters of out there, one of the best women out there, Cris Cyborg.
Yep.
And it didn't go your way. You weren't able to execute your game plan the way you may have wanted to. And it's been a long time since. Have you had some time to reflect, watch the fight back, see where the element was lost, and what did you make of it after you've watched it again?
Yeah. A fight like that with Cris is definitely not one that you forget anytime soon. So I've had, like you said, plenty of time to sort of reflect and go over it. When we returned back to Australia, I actually had to do 2 weeks hotel quarantine.
Yeah.
So that was actually probably like really good that I had that time to sort of sit there and think about the fight and think about sort of the things that I did, like the things that I was happy with. I try and do that in every situation. Obviously I lost the fight, but there were positives that I did take from it.
Right.
But yeah, I obviously didn't go the way we planned. There were parts of the game plan that I did execute. We were trying to take Cris into the later rounds, being a 5-round fight. And I knew after the first round that she did, expended a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My mental approach to, dropping that first round and, getting ready to get to work in the second round, I was happy with that. Just unfortunately, I got clipped with a punch, and for the first time in almost 70 outings in the cage in the ring, I actually showed my opponent that I was hurt. And as soon as it's probably the worst person to do it to as well, because Cris, jumped on the opportunity, and it was the beginning of the end after that. So.
Yeah, but honestly, when I was watching the fight back recently, she was still, whenever she was hitting you, and even from your earlier fights, but even in even your fight against Julia before, whether it be your losses or your victories, whenever you've been hit with a hard shot, as you said, that was the first time you showed a sign of weakness to a shot. But it really showed me how much of an iron chin you had, because even before you got rocked at that last part where it was the beginning of the end, she was still hitting you with some hard shots, and you were eating them and hitting her back. And so it did still show that you had an iron chin. You still were striking back at her, and it was honestly, it was a better performance than most have really had against Cris. So it shouldn't be really something to put one's head down about. And
that's it.
Yeah. So after the fight, you spoke of the 2-week quarantine, right? And people like Dan Hooker, people like Adesanya, and all the other fighters, whether it be from New Zealand or Australia, have spoken about how that place is either a place where you can have some fun, get well rested and rejuvenated to get back into training camp, or it could be and if you've lost, it could be a very dark place to let your thoughts go through. So as you said, you took that time to reflect, but was your 2-week quarantine more of a dark place where you were a little forlorn about the performance, or did you take that time to rejuvenate yourself, get positive energy back into yourself, and then get back into training?
Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't a dark place. I did my quarantine with my partner and also my coach who came over with me, Tyson Pedro. So, they're two people that I'm extremely close with. Obviously, my partner knows me better than anybody else. And, they kept a close eye on me. But also, Tyson's a super cool guy. He kept things really light. We were straight back into training. He's got a lot of recovery with his knee, and he's making his comeback to the UFC cage later on this year. So we were straight back into training. We had a no alcohol policy in the quarantine time and that. So we were eating somewhat healthy up until the last couple of days. And, after, as soon as I lost that fight with Cris, like, you can watch the videos, I, burst into tears in the cage. And I actually think that sort of let it all out. Like, I let it all out there in the cage and walking, out the back. And I didn't bottle anything up. So, my last loss before that fight with Cris was against Julia Budd for the Bellator World Title, and I took that loss really, really hard. Probably because it was such a close fight. It was a controversial decision, but I was really bitter for a long, long time about that loss. But this time around, losing to Cris again, she's an opponent that there's no shame in losing to her. But like I said, I took a lot of positives from that fight. I just fought the baddest woman on the planet. She'd been called out for years up until obviously Amanda Nunes most recently, but she is still a very bad woman in that cage. And, I stood across from her and I didn't feel fear. Even after I just dropped the first round, I was ready to get back in there. Even when she punched me in the nose and, broke it and the blood was everywhere, like I was ready to keep fighting. But, it just, there's a lot of positives that I'm taking from that fight, and then I'm taking it into, the next time I step back into the Bellator cage.
Can you speak to that a little bit? In between rounds, whether or not you've given the round or you've taken the round in the fight, and in between rounds, when you have that 1 minute, are you paying more attention to what your coaches are saying, or are you paying more attention to getting your head back into the game, or catching your breath after a point? Because most of your fights, multiple fights of yours, have been bell to bell beatings for one fighter or the other. You've beaten each other up from bell to bell. So I'm sure between rounds there's like always a lot to think about. So when you're having to get back into the fight, into the next round after the little break, what's really going through your head? What's the mindset like during these times?
Well, it's always been, the first 20 seconds of a round is to control your breathing, because if you're not breathing properly, then, you're hyperventilating almost, and you're definitely not thinking clear. So, it's definitely to get that heart rate down. After my last loss with Julia is when I really started working on my mental approach. So it's only really been the last sort of handful of fights that I've really composed myself in the corner and been able to, the best time yet has been that round after the first round with Cris. I actually sat there and was looking at Tyson and was acknowledging what I was saying. Because, sometimes obviously if you've dropped a round, your thoughts can, get away from you, and you can think things are a lot worse than what they are. But I've noticed that the last sort of 4 fights, I've, really calmed down and been able to, control my breathing, and then, listen to instructions, and then, go out there and follow them. So, previously, like I said, I've competed now, across the board with combat sports, different outings, like over 70 times now. And I've had some terrible corners. My very, very first fight, I remember coming out back from the corner. It was a Muay Thai fight, and I went to my corner and I was like, I'm not going back out there. Like, it was so confronting. It was not what I thought it was going to be like. And so it's been a progression. And like I said, now I've on top of the mental side of things, and made sure that I've really controlled my thoughts.
Yeah, it did pay dividends, and it was evidenced by the fact that, after the Butt fight, when you got back into mixed martial arts, you went on a 3-fight winning streak, and they were all fights that were significantly in your favor. You had 2 finishes and then a unanimous decision in your favor. So, it did pay dividends that way. And now I'm curious about training, right? Because you often train at freestyle MMA, right? And what's interesting to me is that recently with Alex, the featherweight champion in the UFC, going out for the Ortega fight and testing positive, surprisingly, very unfortunate situation. However, with him traveled the head coach and members of the gym, including Joe Lopez. So, what's the scene back at the gym like? Because with Joe not being around, is it still micromanaged by Joe 1,000 miles away, or other members of the staff still taking over? What's going on?
That's a good thing. They've got such a good gym down there that, obviously Joe's keeping his good. I mean, I was down there last time I was down there, and it was funny because he's got surveillance in the gym, so he was actually he was actually seeing what was happening in the gym, and so he obviously keeps an eye on things. He's he's got fighters that have got fights coming up. Justin's got a fight on Eternal coming up again. It was the 7th of May. So, yeah, obviously he's on top of that, making sure that he's getting his conditioning sessions in as per, like, the schedule leading up to a fight. And, obviously, it's a big knock not having Joe in the gym, Alex in the gym, Colby in the gym, because they're, like, the three head coaches. But everybody in the gym is just, obviously so excited about the opportunities that these guys have got over there, being in the tough house, and for the world to see, like, what great guys they are as coaches and that, and what we get to experience down there at Freestyle. But yeah, no, Tara, she's like the gym boss. She's looking after things, and yeah, if you follow their Instagram page, there's always so much banter going on, and they're a good group of people. And the wheels aren't falling off the wagon just because the bosses aren't there.
Yeah, I did have a chance to speak with Tara on Instagram, actually, when I was reaching out to speak with Joe. In fact, I had him on the show earlier, around a little mid last year. So yeah, it was very interesting speaking to Joe, understanding what the atmosphere is like in the gym. The kind of energy brought in by people as lively as Alex. So it was very interesting understanding that atmosphere and what it was like now that they're in the United States. And I mean, you're a 145er. Alex is also a 145er. So have you all? Has there ever been a time where the two of you have often gotten together and for a little bit of a light spa or something of sorts?
Oh, for sure. And that's what I've always loved. Like the guys, see, Wollongong's like an hour and a half, 2 hour drive from where I live here in Western Sydney. But it actually works out well because my daughter lives down there, 15 minutes from the gym, going to university. So it sort of kills, two birds with one stone. I get head down to one of the best gyms in the world training, and then I get to see I see my daughter at the same time. So it works out perfect. But the guys just welcomed me into the gym. There's a little bit of a gym banter going at the moment that I'm Joe's favorite. So but yeah, it's like they've welcomed me in. So, but quite often, even Alex leading into this fight camp for Ortega, I'd be down there and he'd quite often, partner with me for rounds, or he'd always come over and he'd show me something. I'm thinking, this guy's, in a fight camp himself. Everyone, it's well known that it's a selfish sport. Like when you're training, you're focusing on yourself and this and that. But yeah, he's not a selfish person at all. He's always there to help you. And it just makes me want to see him succeed even more because of how much of a good guy he is. But yeah, no, you cannot ask for a better training partner. You've got the 145, world champion available to train with all the time. But he there's definitely levels to this game, and he's at the top.
Exactly, and it makes me wonder. I mean, whenever Alex enters the cage, he's packing a lot of power, and especially in those patented leg kicks of his. And have you ever felt some of these leg kicks, and does it sting the same way that everyone he's fought speaks of?
Oh no, he hasn't kicked me with that power. He's very, very controlled in the gym, and that's the other thing. Like down there, those boys train hard and they drill hard, but it's all very, very safe. And nothing's ever hard. But in saying that, for the sparring rounds that we've done, it's just the going from the flow. It's constant. Like he's kicking, he's punching, he's going for the shot. Like it just leaves you guessing all the time. So nothing ever hard. He's never ever hit me hard or done a rough takedown or anything like that. He's been very, very controlled.
Right. That's great. That's great. So over the pandemic and the lockdown, a lot of fighters have had to go back into their camps and wonder when their next fight would have been. Of course, your fight came very late. Your only fight came in very late into 2020 against Cris. And over this period of time, a lot of fighters have spoken about how they've tried to not rejuvenate, but work on themselves to the level at which they're honing their skills, that they're patching the holes in their game, because the amount of time that they've spent in their training camps gives them time to prepare things people haven't seen in their fight footage before, develop new attributes, new traits, which makes me wonder, when you've been throughout this lockdown period and you've been going to the gym regularly, training, working for the Chris fight, and even up till now, what if you try to really refocus your abilities on to make sure you can develop yourself as a rounded fighter?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm lucky, I guess, because I've been, evolving a lot over the years, and in my last few performances, it hasn't really been able to be demonstrated. Obviously, I got the really quick win, the 22-second knockout of Amanda. So, nothing was really shown except for my hands, which everyone knows. It's that I've got good hands.
Or the Aussie anger fist, they call you.
Yeah, I live up to the name. Leslie, I pretty much just boxed her. That there was no grappling. It didn't go to the ground at all. And then against Cris, unfortunately there was a grappling. She swept me and got me to my feet. Got me onto the ground. I did get back up against the cage in the first round, but obviously the second round, I got submitted. But it wasn't really a testimony to all of the, the wrestling and the wall work I'd been working on. And, even the focus on the jiu-jitsu, I've really been, I actually got my blue belt. I thought I was going to, I thought I was going to be a white belt forever. But I really, really focus on trying to be a complete mixed martial artist, and not, obviously I'm always going to go back to throwing punches because that's what I like to do. But as Tyson's dad said to me once, if I play my best cards first and they don't work, I don't have anything to back it up with. So, I mix it up. I'm a good wrestler and I've got a good ground control. And then, mix it up with some kicks and punches and become an all-rounder.
Yeah, that's brilliant, because the best tool a mixed martial artist could have is mixing the different tools of the arts together. Yeah. And that's actually one of the better things people should be working towards is going for an all-round development. Because when I've spoken to other fighters, they've usually spoken about how they've either worked on a particular element or a particular hole in their game that they found. But it's good to see that you've been working on different elements of your game. And you were saying?
Oh, I was just this at the beginning of this year. I started committing more time to my jiu-jitsu, and I've been at Sydney West Martial Arts now, and from January alone I've probably done more no-gi jiu-jitsu in this 5 months than I have in my whole MMA career. And it's showing. I've got a lot more confidence on the ground, and when I'm carrying it over to my sparring, it's showing. So I'm excited for this next fight. I just want to get back in there. So I was hoping.
Exactly, and that's what I'm excited for too, which is why I was wondering, when do you ideally want to be back in the octagon? Because to my knowledge, I don't think you do have a scheduled fight so far.
No, I was hoping to already, I was hoping to get on one of these April cards. I wanted to get an early start to the year. I wanted a really, really busy year this year. And then, so nothing's officially locked in yet. We're working on a date. If I didn't get on April, I was hoping for May, but potentially June, which is a bit of a late start to what I wanted. But I'm the first to know that plans don't always go the way you plan, so I just go with the flow, and that's how I sort of live my life. And if June happens, there's a reason for it. It just gives me more time to prepare, and I want to go in there and make a statement, and then get back in there really, really quickly after it.
Yeah, that is a brilliant approach to it, because it's a very unique and rare skill to see amongst people to be able to improvise at a point where I have this plan laid out for the year, and most people just stick to that plan, and when it comes a time for plan B, most people are very unprepared. So it's very good to see that people like you are ready to adopt and improvise into whatever's coming next.
Well, it's just like life, isn't it? You just have to be able to, change things up.
Exactly. So it would be interesting to see you back with your new ground game skills, and maybe scoring some of the takedowns and going for a submission. Maybe you never know. And it brings me to switching gears now to again busy fights, as we spoke about. Busy night of fights we had just this last weekend in UFC 261. the triple title fight,
Oh,
from the first prelim knockout to the first prelim fight to the Chris Weidman karma striking to Usman knocking out Masvidal, Nama Yunus on Zhang Weili, and Valentina pulling a Valentina by taking down a grappler and submitting her. It was a
yeah.
phenomenal night of fights. So,
Well,
what did you
easy
make of the card?
going. Like, I didn't actually sit down and start watching the fights until Australian Jimmy Crute fought, and
Yeah,
even
yeah,
with the leg kick, with the nerve
yeah.
at the back of the knee, like that was insane. Because watching it until we were obviously told that it was a nerve that had been kicked, like that first initial kick, I thought he'd just torn his or MCL or something piece or something in his knee, and then the way he was walking, his ankle gave way, and he just
Mhm.
he shot for those takedowns. He just showed what an absolute warrior he is. And then
Yeah.
from that fight, obviously then the Chris Weidman, it just was like wow, 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 wow. Like it was crazy. Still in shock about it.
Yeah, coming back to the Jimmy Crute point, it was very interesting because at the start of the fight, before he got kicked, that messed up his movement and got the fight stopped eventually. He was looking good in there, and while he was having quite a chess battle with Anthony Smith, he
Yeah.
also looked refreshed, one of the better Anthony Smiths we've seen in a long, long time. And it would have been a very good breakout fight for Jimmy, but he was just caught in the wrong way at the wrong time. And while it's props to Anthony Smith. You really look for someone like Jimmy Crute, who's young and hungry for more, to be back sometime soon.
Oh, for
But
sure, he'll definitely be back. Like it was a good back and forth fight because Lionheart's jab was looking really, really good, and obviously
yeah,
Jimmy, landing some nice leg kicks, and then it would have been really, really interesting. And obviously then he shot and got those takedowns towards the end of the round, so it would have been good to see what the second round. Obviously if he could regain some control in that leg, but hopefully they can run that fight back
yeah,
on the track.
yeah. You'd hope to see it because someone like Anthony Smith, he's essentially, if I may be so bold, so as to say, the gatekeeper of the light heavyweight division at this point, similar to what Derek Brunson was to the light heavyweight to the middleweight division.
Yeah,
So it would have been Kevin Holland's breakthrough to get past Derek's, similarly to Jimmy, whose
yeah.
breakthrough it would have been to get past Lionheart. And it still speaks volumes for Lionheart because it showed how much he had to risk, because he would have gone far, far down and in his tracks to get back to his title shot after maybe Teixeira. It set a good statement for him. But the thing that struck me the most, and it almost made me puke, was the fight right after that, which was Chris Weidman versus Uriah Hall. And while and there's so many different things to feel bad for, because you couldn't see the elements that Uriah Hall would have brought into the game. You couldn't see what Chris Weidman's capable of after being shut down such a long time, bringing himself back into that championship winning mentality. He looked like almost like Adonis walking into the fight, and
Yeah.
to have that play out like that, it's just gut wrenching for the
Oh,
viewers.
I don't think there was anyone that's, was in the crowd that day watching it, or anyone that, like my heart goes out to him. Obviously, like Chris is 36 now, and it was only that while he was walking out, I was thinking, God, how old's Chris Weidman now? Like he just, he's a veteran of veterans. Like he's been around, he's fought. And then, it was only that, I looked it up and I was like, he's 36, and thinking like, he's coming towards the end. And then obviously for something like that to happen, like that's a big recovery. And I really hope that he, gets back into the UFC cage, because it would be, everyone will want to see that.
Yeah, exactly, because that's what I'm afraid of, right? Because after the oncology report came out on Chris, he had surgery on the leg, and he was told that he'd have at least 6 to 12 months
Yeah.
minimum before he can get back to activities like driving and walking around without the crutches. And
Mm.
then he has to get the balance back of hopping on his leg, bouncing back and forth in the fight stance, uh, getting his confidence back in the striking, the fix, and at least the trauma aspect of uh,
Yeah.
striking a leg kick, because because I'm fairly sure he'd be way more wary of using that element of his game now that something like that took place. And there was a lot of discussions about whether or not he had prior injuries an early hairline fracture, a set of mini fractures that I think McGregor put out in a tweet in the leg kick. So it'd be very interesting to see how Weidman tries to recover from this, because when this happened to another guy who he fought, Anderson Silva, against
Yeah.
him, how karma strikes someone.
I know. What are the chances? Like,
Yeah,
it's. I think that's what's mind blowing about it. Like, I mean, the only other time that we've seen. I mean, I don't think that injuries happened before. Like since then, has it?
yeah.
With
There's been one Tory Hill, I think he was
like,
along
yeah,
a while before Anderson,
yeah,
and Anderson folded the same way Weidman did. And
yeah,
what I'm afraid of for Weidman is that when we saw Anderson Silva, because after the first Weidman fight, and we didn't really see Anderson Silva go back with an injury. He just tried to play the fool a little bit, mess with him, and he got caught. However, in the second fight, Anderson. We didn't see the same Anderson ever again, because
no,
because Anderson's known for his movement, the way he moves around the cage, the way he flaunts his weapons in front of his opponent without even throwing them, and to see that happen to Chris, it's just mind-boggling, because Anderson still had a few more years to come back, but Weidman has maximum four. So, and at
yeah,
least a year of which is going out into recovery. So,
yeah.
yeah. And
Well,
I'd like you to speak to this a little bit. We had the next two fights in the women's division, the strawweight and the flyweights, putting on absolute masterclasses, with Valentina scoring a record high 7 takedowns on Jessica Andrade, known for her takedowns and her wild power, and and to see Valentina moving into the pocket so frequently was insane, as well as Rose Namajunas taking out the absolute machine that was Zhang Weili coming into that fight. So what did you think of those fights as they played out?
I was super excited for those fights. I've loved Rose as a fighter and a person for years. I was only just starting off my fight career. I think I was in fight camp for my very first MMA fight when Rose did her flying armbar back on Invicta, like 7 years ago, and I was like,
Yeah,
this chick's cool. And then I started watching a lot of her and Pat Barry with their videos and the things that they were doing. I'm like, these are a really cool couple. Like, I just love the support. And yeah, like they give each other, and obviously him as a coach, and just them evolve over the years, and obviously her become champion and then lose her belt and then come back the way that she has, and to see her now, like that the moment between her and Pat Barry at the end when he was asking, like, who's the best, and then
yeah,
she, it was just like, I get that now. Like my partner's like that. He's my biggest fan and my biggest supporter too, and we had a moment similar to that in a different context. So, because obviously I lost my fight to Chris, but he was the one that was there to sort of console me, pick me up, and get me back to this position here where I am now. But like I said, I've always loved Rose, and I could not be happier, and to see her the world champion again. And when that belt was put around her waist, and she was so emotional, and it was so real, and it's probably one of the best things that I've liked about her, is that she's just always been so real, and never tried to pretend to be anything or hide what she is as a person. And I think the world and this sport needs more people like her.
yeah.
And then Valentina, she's technically she's one of my favorite fighters, because she's just got it all. Like, she's a Muay Thai world champion, but focused a lot on her wrestling, and she was at Tiger Muay Thai with the Hickman brothers, and I've never trained with her or met her, but from the stories that they tell me, she's just an absolute animal in training. And to take it to the girl with her opponent's strengths and beat her at her own strength, it just goes to show like the next level. Like, she will retire a champion, because there is no one that will beat her. There's nobody that's going to come up, because she's just so well rounded.
There's only like two elements left to Valentina Shevchenko that we are yet to see. We've already spoke when in fact, I had a chance to speak with George Hickman, one half of the Hickman brothers, and he was talking to me about how much of a monster he is at training, and even to what she spoke about in her post-fight presser, she spoke about how she makes her fights. Someone asked her, how do you make your fights look so easy? To which she said, my fights aren't easy, and it's on account of the fact that I trained so hard before that the final product is that easy to produce.
Yeah.
And when she said that, it made me wonder. There's only one fight that's really looming all around, which is the trilogy with Amanda Nunes. And the first fight, it was 1-2 Amanda, and the second fight, it was considered 3-2 in favor of Amanda, but that could have easily been, at least I thought Valentina won that fight,
Yeah,
and it's technically 4-4 at that point. And it'd be very interesting to see them run that fight back, and put the nail in that coffin once and for all, whether or not it's Valentina or Amanda as the GOAT in the women's division.
yeah,
However, it makes me wonder where they're going to fight, because at 135, Amanda's feeling too small, and Valentina's feeling perfect at her weight division. So it would be interesting to see where Valentina tries to go from here, whether or not she wants to go up, or even if Amanda's interested in coming down, because she still has the fight with so many different fights lined up for her with different contenders coming up left, right, and center. It'll be
yeah.
very interesting to see how that plays out. And finally, coming to the last fight, which was the most jaw-dropping fight you would really see in the welterweight division, in Usman Masvidal. You know, for someone like Masvidal, who's known for his striking, being so wary of the ground game, the threat brought to the ground game by Usman, didn't see coming. The level of stand-up that he drilled with one of the most legendary coaches of all time in Trevor Whitman, throwing the ditto same strike that knocked Masvidal out the first time he was knocked out, and made it the second time. Because even the last time round, it was the left hook. It was the left hook, right cross that knocked him out the first time, and same thing the second time, showing the planning genius between the training camp at Team Usman. So
Yeah.
when you were watching this fight through, and you were looking at the striking, what did you make of that first round when Usman got a little wild, and and Masvidal started having his moments, the flying knee to the takedown? When you were watching this through, what were you thinking?
Oh, it's just the beauty of MMA. This is the thing, because I think we were all still so in shock with what had just happened. And this is the thing, like, even, going back to the Rose fight, like, they're still getting each other's distancing. And, yeah, like, you really can't blink because, 4-ounce gloves, and especially the power that the two got, like, the guys both have, like, more so Masvidal. But he, like, it just goes to show a fight can just end at any second, and you can't rule somebody out. Obviously, it was so surprising to see it end like that. It was a beautiful, beautiful punch, and but yeah, it's the fight game. That's why I think everyone just loves this sport, because yeah, you've just really got to watch it. The fact that even going back to Valentina, she had the rear naked choke. And almost sunk that in the first round. Like, she's a striker. Like, here she is choking out on, like, almost choking Andrade out. So yeah, I think that card there will actually go down in history. Like, I know it will in my eyes, because it was just, I think too, because what was the fight card before it, where it had the 3 title fights? What was the last card? That was Izzy and
Yeah, that was Izzy,
yeah,
Yan, and wow. I don't remember this. It was the Izzy versus Paulo, Jan versus
yeah,
Dominic,
yeah.
and Amanda versus, I believe it was
Oh, Megan.
yeah, Amanda versus Megan
Yeah.
Anderson. Again,
Yeah,
one
I
a
think a lot of
phenomenal
people
knockout.
a lot of people were obviously Amanda and Megan, that finish. But I think a lot of people were sort of disappointed in that card. It was like a big hype, up for it. But yeah, 261 did not disappoint, because anyone that was putting bets on that fight would have been really, really hard to even put bets on that and come through, because it was so unpredictable.
Yeah, because the most interesting, the recently with betting, mostly when people are placing the bets, you have to look at first who's winning, which round they win, and with what medium, whether it's a knockout or a submission, or again a decision.
Yeah.
So most people, at least with the few sites that I've looked at, whether it's on Topology or whether it's on Verdict MMA, the non-money related betting sites, and most of them went for Amanda Nunes knockout, and that's what we were about to see until when she knocked down Megan, and then she went and submitted her. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
saw, yay, we won, and then oh no, she submitted her. I don't know how that made you feel.
Yeah.
So
It was funny because, I remember my partner, he's a football player or soccer. I'm not sure what you call it.
yeah, football. That's the
Football,
word.
yeah. Yeah, that's okay. So he's a football player, and when we first started dating, he didn't really know the fight scene well and stuff like that. He quite often put bets on, thinking I would know. And I'm the worst for picking fights because I think I pick with my heart sometimes too, like who I want to win, but not necessarily on skill. But yeah, not very good at picking fight odds.
Yeah, I mean, betting just a weird side of mixed martial arts, because whenever you really looked at people betting, whether it's a friendly bet or whether it's you're putting money on it, you're whether or not you're the guy you've picked actually won the round, you're just saying, oh no, he's definitely won. Just give it to him. Just give it to him.
Yeah.
And even if he doesn't win, the disappointment that comes off the fight, it doesn't let you savor the same the pleasure of watching mixed martial arts in itself.
Yeah.
Which is why, I mean, personally, I'd refrain from putting stakes into that fight myself, because I'd like to enjoy the action that's in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, now I wanted to switch gears and move on to talking about your background into mixed martial arts, right? So, similar to Masvidal himself, he had a very rocky beginning into mixed martial arts. Whether it was getting into the sport and his start into the sport, you too have faced adversity from your very first fight, and you had to develop yourself, get back in the mix. As you said, you weren't willing to get back into the next round of the fight in your first time in. So how did you get in, like, fall in love with mixed martial arts and go into it full time?
So boxing was my primary sport.
Yeah.
I was an amateur boxer and then a professional boxer, and a two-time world boxing
Yeah.
champion, and that's where my focus was. Things started getting a little bit slow with trying to find opponents, so that's when I started mixed martial arts. And to be honest, those the first sort of year and a half of me doing mixed martial arts here on the domestic scene in Australia, I was just taking fights my first year. I think I had 8 fights. I fought I started doing MMA training in the January, had my first fight in the April. So 4 months of scraping the surface. It was like a whip to warrior fight camp, really, when you think about it. I hadn't done any wrestling or jiu-jitsu or very minimal kicking in the past. So, I had 16 weeks of, training before my first MMA fight. And then my second MMA fight was only 4 weeks after that. My third MMA fight was another 8 weeks after that. So it was a very, very fast-paced first year. And, I copped losses, but it didn't worry me. Like, I was a professional because I had to be a professional MMA fighter because I was already a professional boxer. So, my fights and my losses were going on my record, but I was just keeping active in between boxing fights. And it wasn't until my second year that, my record was 5 wins, 4 losses. So I'd had 9 MMA fights in 2014, and I had a win, a stoppage win over a girl from New Zealand who'd been signed to Invicta. And that's when I got approached by my manager, who offered to get me to sign to Bellator. So I was sort of like a bit hesitant. I'm like, I may as well, as long as I can still box and everything like that. Meanwhile, I still hadn't had any boxing fights or anything. It was just all MMA at that stage. And so 2014 got signed to Bellator in October 2014. And in May 2015, I had my debut fight. And I was flying over on the plane to America with my coach. And I just sort of thought about it. I was like, oh my God, I'm like, I'd seen Bellator on TV here and, watched some hectic, crazy fights, in their early days. And, I just thought, wow, this is like pretty big. I was the first Australian female signed to Bellator. At that stage, there wasn't many Australian females on the international scene. I was sort of like starting to pave the way. And at that moment I thought, I'm going to take this for all I can, make the most of it. And I ended up going over there. enjoying every single moment of the trip. Came away with a stoppage win in the first round, and put my record to 6 wins, 4 losses. And then from there, I thought I better start taking this sport seriously. And it's been MMA and Bellator pretty much ever since.
Yeah, it's brilliant because and it makes me wonder because every time someone in Bellator starts building up a lot of traction, or someone from any of the scenes brings in any amount of traction, the first person to really sweep them up is the brand that's really considered the premier at this point in time, the UFC. So I'm curious. So when you were offered the Bellator contract, and as you were going through your Bellator contract, were you offered a chance to move up to the UFC?
So it was 2000. It was after the Julia Budd fight. After that, it was after the first Bellator. In between the first and second contract, I had a period there where I had 2 fights outside of the Bellator promotion. I wasn't under contract with them anymore. And the UFC had told me, because I was trying to get fight as a bantamweight, because I'm quite light as a featherweight. I don't ever have to cut much weight. I walk around sort of the same weight that Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm walk around at to make bantamweight. So, we were trying to push at that time for me to go to the UFC. So the UFC had told me to rack up 2 quick wins at bantamweight. So I got 2 first-round stoppages. Because it was super determined. So I got 1 in 1 minute and 9 seconds, and I think the next one was like 3 minutes into the first round. So we were all pretty much guns going over to UFC, and then Bellator approached me to re-sign with them as a featherweight, and the contract that they offered. And also just with me, like at that time, I was sort of between minds. I had my coach at the time telling me, because UFC, that's where you want to end up. But I was sort of, between minds. Like Bellator are a really, really good promotion. Like I said before, they signed me when my record was 5-4. So they gave me an opportunity to get overseas. When other promotions probably wouldn't, the UFC probably wouldn't look at a record like that. That's not what they're really interested in. I was given an opportunity to go over with Bellator. So, there was a thing in my stomach sort of thinking that heading to the UFC wasn't the right option. So I ended up re-signing with Bellator. There was another opportunity with the Contender Series when the featherweights were in the house, the females. I got approached for that. And, the last time my manager was contacted was actually last year during the Cris Cyborg fight camp, just inquiring on, how many fights I've got left on my contract and that. But, I've actually since then re-signed with Bellator for another 4 fights. So I'm not going anywhere.
Brilliant.
It seems silly. Look, that we've got the deepest division in the world. Like there's so many featherweights. I mean, Cris is over there now. UFC don't have that many featherweights. And,
that is true because the UFC's women's division isn't as nearly as deep as compared to the Bellator division because many of the UFC's top-ranking women have switched over to the into Bellator, including the champion in the featherweight division herself, Cris Cyborg, and it'd be very interesting to see how their division plays out because the featherweight division is sort of about to fade out. So I think from the perspective of a women's fighter trying to go into the UFC for the featherweight division, it'd be very shallow for them because there isn't really too much more to offer. So it'd be very so it seems wiser there.
Fellow Aussie, Megan Anderson, who's signed with the UFC. We know that she's not under contract anymore. Just interesting to see what her next move will be. Whether or not I have another Aussie, and it'll be there'll be 3 of us then signed to Bellator as featherweights, but or she'll stay with the UFC. So it's interesting.
It should be interesting to see how that plays out. And I want to talk to you again about another element of your career that may have either motivated you or be a little bit of a I wouldn't call it a roadblock, but may have put a bit more added pressure on you for you to handle and move forward. So, of course, you became a parent as well throughout your time in fighting, right? And I'm sure that yeah, when I've spoken to fighters recently, like this Joe Selecki recently, one of the fighters recently signed to the UFC. He spoke of how fatherhood really made him open his eyes to like a new level of work. As thinking like he needs to be a lot more motivated than he is, and it did help him work harder to achieve his goals. So when you became a parent, and as you've been going forward, how has that impacted your career in mixed martial arts?
Um, so when I first started as an amateur boxer, I was 26. So I was late in my career. I was already a mum. I had both my kids already by then. So I was a single mum starting out my amateur boxing career. Throughout my career, I've made decisions to benefit my family. So, one of which, for example, is I turned from amateur to a professional boxer because of all the travel that I was doing as an amateur, all the commitments that were needed for me to be a successful amateur boxer. And that was, traveling with the Australian team. If they were, having camps and trips overseas. Now, it was a lot of time for me to be away from two kids that were quite young back then. My son was, only a year old when I first started fighting. And, my daughter was at an age where she needs a mum at home. And when you're a single parent, you've got a lot more on your shoulders. I was also obviously working as well, putting a roof over over their heads, and it was a extremely difficult time of my life. Those early days. Obviously now, 12 years on, I'm definitely a lot more secure. I've got a very supportive partner. My kids are older, so traveling overseas and doing being away for a few weeks, or I was away for a month for the Cris Cyborg fight. It's easier now because they're older, a lot more independent. Like I said, my daughter actually has moved out. She's at university. But yeah, throughout my career, I've made decisions. The move to Sydney was to benefit them, but it also benefited my career being down here with more professional coaches and training partners. But the biggest one I would say for me is I started my fight career to be a positive role model for my children. You lead by example, and both my kids have grown up watching me pursue my dreams and work extremely hard towards them, and I can see that that's carried on for them, taught them to do the same sorts of things in their life. And yeah, I've sacrificed a lot of time being away from them, every time I'm at the gym training, or dragging them along to the gym in those early days when they were little. I made sure that when I was on those mats, or in the boxing ring or whatever, I was giving 110% every session, because I thought that if I'm going to be giving up my time that I could be spending with the kids to do this, then I'm there to train and make the most of it. So, and yeah, it's paid off.
Yeah, brilliant. And it really shows how hard work and dedication to something pays off. And it may have motivated you, that extra step that you may not have had without them. And and all power to you for it, for handling it with such class, and not giving up at any step of that way. And shifting gears, whenever anyone is getting into mixed martial arts, whenever there's that one group of people who just loves to fight and just loves to just throw hands, and there's this other group that sees mixed martial arts as something quite fun and interesting, the technical aspects of it. Which aspect, which one of these halves were you a part of, and who were the few fighters, females or males, that you looked at when you were growing up and thought, what, I want to get into this and make it my career?
I would say I'm probably both sides of it, but I mean, considering I'm anger fist, there's definitely that side of me that loves violence. But on the Aussie front, I remember seeing John Wang Pa, Mark Hunt, a lot of Mark Hunt actually. But just those two guys, and obviously on the boxing scene, it was more boxing that I sort of watched, and that's what interested me. But yeah, on the female side of things, when I first started getting into boxing, Holly Holmes was definitely someone that I idolized, and obviously when she then moved over from boxing to MMA, and then obviously became the MMA world champion. like one of my boxing world titles that I've got was held before by her before me.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's like, it was really cool. But yeah, just seeing her transition from the two sports, and obviously, you know, I transitioned from boxing to MMA, and yeah, and then the person that she was, and obviously now having met her and spent time with her, you know, it's exactly the same as, you know, my thoughts with Rose too. Like, I just like people who are just genuinely good people, and Holly's that. So yeah, she was someone that I definitely, you know, fangirled, and then, you know, I finally got to meet her, and then, you know, the next day I was in the ring sparring her, and yeah.
How did the sparring sessions turn out?
Yeah, well, Holly is the only person that's ever dropped me in a sparring set. Actually, the only time I've ever been dropped, I was actually dropped in a boxing fight years ago in the first round, but continue on to fight the whole 10 rounds. But no, Holly is actually the only person that's dropped me in training. She got me with a head kick. Same one that she got Ronda with. And yeah, crazy. And that's only inspiring. So I'd hate to imagine how hard she kicked Ronda that night day.
Yeah, and you know, that kick was electric. You could feel, you know, the waves going around that arena. You know,
Yeah.
as soon as it connected, and you saw, you know, Ronda's hand go all the way down, and her legs go out from underneath her. It was the most phenomenal thing one would have ever seen, because every time Ronda bum rushed someone, she always caught them. And Holly didn't just you know, support herself and you know, defend herself well when she was caught in a clinch with Ronda. She made sure she had the elements and the tools of the game that she took from boxing, which was leg movement, and you know, her footwork around the cage, octagonal control, you know, understanding the cage, and you know, being able to move around and then eventually set up that kick. It was just a masterclass put on by her. And yeah, it's very interesting on that played out. And you know, and on that fruitful note, I think that's all that I have left so far. And you know, usually what we do when we're coming to the end of the show, we give it back to our guest. So if there's anything else you'd like to say, anyone you'd like to give a shout out to, a final message for the Anger Fist fans out there, or whatever you want to say.
I always say hello to my two kids, because I know that they like to listen to my podcast. So Kayla and Kian, hello. Obviously, all of my sponsors that have you know, backed me over the years. I said this in I think actually, I had an Instagram story, you know, a questionnaire thing, and so somebody asked me who my favorite sponsor was, and it was actually one of my sponsors writing the question, being cheeky. But yeah, like over the years, obviously I don't have all the same sponsors that I've had, but I'm extremely grateful for the people that have backed me over the years. You know, the unsung heroes, because especially in those early days of fighting, when I wasn't getting paid a lot of money, you know, as I said before, as a single mum, it really, really did help. Now I've got like a really good team of sponsors behind me, people that have backed me, you know, for years now, and super grateful for all my fans as well. You know, my social media is growing. It's something that I do want to keep growing a lot more. So if you do want to follow me, the Aussie Girl Anger Fist, follow my Instagram account. I am probably more active on that than Twitter and Facebook. I feel like I could spend a lot more time if you're on my phone, if I was doing all of it. So yeah, follow me on Instagram. And yeah, thank you for listening, and please, yeah, follow my career, and hope I inspire you. And yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Once again, thank you so much for joining in. We'll be linking all of her socials down in the description, down in the section below. And yeah, once again, thank you so much for joining in. It was a real pleasure having you on, and maybe we'll have you back on the show, maybe sometime leading up to one of your fights or after it, or what have you. Yeah, so thank you, and thank you to the viewers for watching. That's what that was, and we will see you on the next one.
Awesome.